This is my Specialized Kenevo Expert full-fat e-bike. After 9 months and 1,200 miles of absolutely hammering it in the Pacific Northwest, I thought it was past time to revisit the bike and do an updated video to the medium-term review I'd posted last summer. It's a heavy hitter that weighs in with 180 millimeters of travel front and rear. It comes stock with a dual crown boxer fork up front and a RockShox Select Plus air shock to take care of business out back. It is fully 27.5 front and rear. The bike is spec'd with SRAM Code RS brakes and a SRAM drivetrain. The wheel set is Specialized own house Roval alloy rims and comes with Butcher tires front and rear. A Specialized proprietary motor is paired with a 700 watt-hour battery, providing more than adequate range and up to 90 newton-meters of torque. So, just headed out the door this evening with 100% of my battery charged up. Battery's at 100%. It's a beautiful night. Headed up into Galbraith with no time constraints. So I figured it'd be a good night to grab the camera and kind of revisit the Kenevo. Yeah, just climbing up. And when I filmed the first video, I was kind of talking about how on single track, like pedaling, I was kind of feeling out the power. And I was on eco or trail mostly. And I've put another 1,000 miles on the bike at least. And I find myself more on turbo when climbing, like this little gap here. Woo! Yeah, you're never pulling for that on an analog bike. So, and yeah, the Kenevo's a big bike, but you know, huge reach, big wheelbase. But I made it work. So here's a good example. Tight little spot here. See if we can make this. Yep. I've been able to make it work. It's not always pretty, but yeah, just rips up these climbs and definitely eats more of the battery when you're pedaling everywhere in turbo. But I can easily do, I think it's around 4,000 feet, maybe 25 miles before I get it down to a point where I'm concerned about battery life. So yeah, it's just super fun to get up this fast and get more descending. All right, made it up to the top of Evo Evolution with 68% battery at turbo. And I guess I usually descend and trail. It's kind of a good spot for me. Power's there if I need it. The geometry of this bike is beyond extreme. I ride a size S4, which is basically Specialized size large. I'm 6 foot tall. The reach is a whopping 500 millimeters with a wheelbase of 1292 paired with a 64-degree head tube angle. These numbers would be an XL in most brands. It definitely has a ton of stability and handles steep and gnarly trails really well. The benefits of the longer reach and slightly steeper head tube angle compared to other slack enduro and downhill bikes is that my weight feels much more evenly distributed over the top tube.
So, of course, it just feels really good. And the steeper stuff. And stuff gets a little bit faster. Just super stable. And do you really need this much bike? You probably don't. Especially on this stuff, but it's pretty damn fun. Just have the dual crown, just soak everything up.
I never have to think about getting my weight over the front wheel as the Geo takes care of that for me. This makes the bike feel really good cornering and charging lower angled flow tech trails. Due to the length of the bike, cornering takes much more body language and requires me to lean the bike much more purposely than I would on, say, my Transition Spire. Once I rode it for a few rides, muscle memory took over and I've been cornering effortlessly ever since.
Definitely overbiked yet again, but it's really fun in this stuff. You just have to get used to the bike and the fact it takes a lot more body language to maneuver it. And once you get used to that, it's actually pretty damn fun. see. I think I'd have that today. Oh God! Oh, I think I overcooked that a little bit. Holy shit. Okay, we'll leave that for another day. I gotta follow somebody into that one. God damn. All right, well, so I think point proven. This is too much bike, but when you f it up like that, way more survivable. So, oh man, a little too much speed there, I think. Oh, here's another one. Oh yeah, that's a good one. What do we have here? Gap into that, sick. Oh God, I thought I was gonna blow off into the woods. That was scary. But yeah, the stability of the bike, just, it makes stuff like that work out. I would have been on a smaller bike, narrower bars, shorter wheelbase, it might have went badly.
The Kenevo absolutely thrives in fast flow tech. The bike is happiest on DH style trails where there are high speeds and plenty of gnar to plow through or pop over. It also comes alive when things get steep and sketchy, inspiring confidence when the traction is minimal and the commitment level is high. My personal favorite thing about the bike is the dual crown that comes stock in the Expert build. Leave a comment and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there are no other e-bikes on the market that come stock out of the box with the dual crown fork. This is a total no-brainer for me. If I have a motor to zip me up the climbs, a few extra pounds and a burlier, stiffer fork makes a ton of sense. It feels absolutely heroic when smashing through chunk at speed and soaking up those excessively big hits and compressions. Also, it just looks badass. I get it's probably a niche corner of the market, but I wish more brands would offer a burly e-bike downhill build as a stock option. The rear suspension has felt fine. It's an air shock that works. I have been running 30% sag in the rear, and I feel like there are times I can plow through the travel a bit more than I would expect, so I will probably get around to throwing in a volume reducer at some point. Overall, it works great, and the air helps make the bike feel poppy and light, almost making me forget I'm descending on a 56-pound behemoth. The inherent poppiness of the air shot combined with the wheelbase and reach makes this bike feel really safe to send into orbit. The 56 pounds makes it noticeably harder to pop off the ground than, say, the average enduro bike, but once again, I figured out the body language and the muscle memory takes over, and I have no problem popping all of my favorite doubles and trail speed gaps. It feels really safe in the air, and even when I make mistakes and dead sail or ascend, the travel and stability come to the rescue, allowing me to get away with some pretty sketchy near misses.
So yeah, it jumps pretty well. I've been able to session stuff a lot more, which has definitely helped with just clearing some of the jumps in here, the bigger ones. Great corners on this trail.
I definitely notice a slight harshness on repetitive hits due to the progressive nature of air, but the trade-off for being able to absolutely pop into orbit balances this out versus me running a plush linear coil. I also appreciate the simplicity of the RockShox suspension. Just being able to set up a few settings, dial it in within reason, and be out in this trail shredding is a huge benefit over the never-ending tinkering wormhole you can get sucked into with the Fox products. The SRAM Code RS brakes get the job done. It's a heavy bike, and I would absolutely prefer Shimano or another brand with a stronger bite point, but if you like the spongy modulation of SRAMs, you'll like this package just fine. I did run into some long-term issues with the rear brake's 220mm rotor flexing and rubbing into the chainstay, causing damage. So I was forced to replace that with a 200mm rotor. I also had the brake cable rub on the frame, causing a catastrophic failure on one of the steeper trails locally, but more on that later. That was not an issue with the SRAM brakes, but with Specialized poorly routed brake lines that butted up against the seat stay and chainstay. Can't blame SRAM for that near-death experience.
Look at the bike status here. So we have 1,170.7 miles, 52 charge cycles. It still says my battery's at 100% capacity. Right, so we're getting off the flow. Galbraith has plenty of good flow, good jump lines. We're gonna get into some tech, which is a really fun place to be on this bike. This is one of my favorites, dad bod, nice and chunky entrance. This dual crown's just so fun on this trail. You can just smash through here. Gap this. Rip out. Oh yeah, eyes are watering. Good stuff. Oh, eyes are watering tonight. Dirt's so good. But yeah, the only changes I've actually made to the build out of the box that you'd get brand new, if you could find one brand new or used, is the tires. So I'm running an Ebike and a DHR2 now instead of the, I believe there were 2 butchers that came on it. Oh yeah. Nice to have the e-bike motor once you get in here too. Some of these punchy little climbs try to blink out the tears in my eyes. Chat's tight, and you can make this bike work in here. Like, I wouldn't say it's the best, but it feels good once you get used to the way it handles. I honestly kind of forget it's such a big bike. So this is going to be the most appropriate trail of the day for a DH bike. I'd almost prefer one on it. Got a little bit of everything.
Specialized motor is quiet, smooth, and feels great. I have had no issues with it whatsoever after riding through a wet Pacific Northwest winter and logging over 1,000 miles. I'm definitely happy with the package. The battery also offers plenty of range and has been totally reliable for me. I've climbed over 6,000 feet on a single charge with no issues and can do over 4,000 feet just blasting the entire ride in turbo with no effort to conserve the battery. It is solid. The drivetrain has been adequate, gets the job done, and shifting has remained crisp and clean even after 1,200 miles of riding. I will say, with the extra mileage and torque that you put through your drivetrain with the e-bike, your components will be worn out much quicker, so check your chain every week or so. I missed the window to replace the chain, so now I have a worn out cassette. I haven't replaced anything yet. I'm just gonna run the drivetrain totally into the ground before replacing everything. Also, keep an eye on your brake pads. The added weight and mileage really wear pads out quickly as well. The rims have been great. I still haven't trued them since purchase, and they aren't noticeably wobbly and have held up under plenty of hard impacts. I'm running Cushcore front and rear, so that helps with the durability. The Butcher tires were super solid, but after wearing them out, I went with my tried and true Maxxis Assegai DHR2 combo. Now on to the negatives after 1 year on the bike. I don't love riding this bike in slow tech. Bottom bracket is pretty low, and hanging up on rock and roots is pretty annoying. The heavy weight also makes it hard to navigate slower speed tech sections when momentum won't carry the day. The bottom bracket is also made of plastic, consisting of both the motor and the battery. I have cracks in both of these that aren't causing me any issues as of yet, but it's still not ideal.
This whole apparatus here is pretty weak for the impacts you're going to take on this bike. It's really low. It's a low bottom bracket. It's close to the ground. Takes a lot of hard hits. So it's plastic, and that's the battery. It slides in and out here, bolts in. So that cracked. Also, oh, I just noticed this. This is all busted. That's not the battery. That's the motor. So yeah, they could have done a better job strengthening this up.
The battery charging door is also easy to snag on stuff, which could cause it to open and be damaged. I saw this happen to a buddy's Kenevo, and it wasn't a cheap fix. Some type of latch to secure the door would have been a smart idea.
And this is the charge port, and that just pops out. It's not like bolted in. There's no clip. So if you hit something with your bottom bracket, you can actually pull this charge port out and tear this off, and this connects your battery to the motor. So if that happens mid-ride, it's toast. You have no power. So that's honestly pretty poorly designed.
The linkage design is also pretty poorly thought out. Due to the stresses the frame puts on the shaft of the shock, there's a high risk of snapping coil shocks. This is a huge bummer, as I would love to run a coil on this build, but I don't trust it will hold up. The dropper post insertion depth is also pretty abysmal for a size S4, and I have not been able to make anything longer than the 180 work. A 200mm dropper would improve the feel of the bike for me. This is due to the horrendously routed internal cables. Everything dips down towards the motor, so replacing any cables is a massive pain in the ass, requiring taking off the rear shock and dropping the motor. I try to do most of my own wrenching, and Specialized really made that a miserable endeavor with the Kenevo.
I did have the rear rotor rub. You can see right down in there, it was actually rubbing on the frame, just flexing with use. So I replaced that with a 200 mil rotor down from 220. It's been fine. Now the big problem I had, which almost killed me, was Specialized routes their cable close to the seat stay and the chain stay for the brake line. And that was rubbing on the frame. It actually rubbed a hole through the cable and leaked a bunch of fluid, which was a slow leak, and had the brakes bled, took it into the shop. They couldn't figure it out, did a quick bleed. I rode it for like a week, and it failed on me catastrophically on a super steep trail. And if I would have ridden about 5 more feet, it would have been bad. I was about to drop into a really sustained chute, and the brake went from 100% to 0% in about 30 seconds. So check your cables, see if you're wearing through, because I have a few buddies who have these, and at least one of them checked his cables and noticed that it was actually wearing, and I think a few of the other guys said that their cables were also touching in the same spot. So yeah, not awesome.
After 1,200 miles on the Kenevo, I haven't changed my opinion about this bike. It's an all-out brawler that absolutely smashes anything you throw its way, and it is an absolute joy to ride. If you can track this bike down new, I would totally recommend picking one up. I'm sure plenty of these will be popping up in the used market this season as well. If you have trails that are gnarly enough to justify having a DH bike, the Kenevo will be an absolute riot. It's amazing to have a self-shuttle option that gets you to the gnarliest descents in town with the near full capabilities of a dedicated DH park bike. I really hope to see more offerings along these lines from other companies. It would be really cool to see a 200mm travel DH e-bike pop up. Well, that about wraps up the review. Thanks for watching, and have fun out there.